Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to launch CPIB's Roving exhibition today, Declassified Corruption Matters. Singapore is recognized around the world as a country with a clean and incorrupt system. In international rankings, we do well, whether it's Transparency International, whether it's the World Bank, or whether it's the PERC rankings. We ourselves track our corruption statistics carefully, and this year, the number of corruption cases investigated is at an all-time low. CPIB has tabled a report on corruption to Parliament. I think it's being put up today, and in future we will regularly do so to keep this in the public spotlight so people know what the CPIB is doing and focus on this advantage as well as potential problem. So I'd like to thank all CPIB officers, past and present, as well as officers from other agencies like the AGC and the Home Team for their dedication and their resolve. Many countries send officials to study our experience fighting corruption in Singapore. They want to know the details, how we do it, what laws we have, how our agencies operate, how the system is organized. And they come, they see, they learn. And all these things which they can see, in principle they can do. And in fact, many systems, many countries have done the same. Set up anti-corruption agencies, enacted laws, put in place codes of conduct for public servants. And yet, corruption in many countries remains endemic. It's both developed countries and also developing countries. So, what is our secret to keep Singapore clean? I believe there are three factors. All of them are easy to state, but all of them are much harder to implement and for others to replicate. And we ourselves will need to work hard in order to maintain them. First and most fundamentally, we started with strong political leadership. A leadership determined to eradicate corruption, and we have maintained this ever since. In 1959, when Singapore first attained self-government from the British, and we held elections, the pioneer leaders of the People's Action Party faced a very important choice, whether or not to fight the elections to win, or just to fight to do well and form the largest party in opposition. It was not a straightforward decision because at that time Singapore faced many problems: poverty, poor public health, an acute housing shortage, a stagnant economy, an exploding population, and political pressures. So the PAP had two choices: contest enough seats to become a strong opposition party, but let another party take office, govern, and probably fail before the PAP comes in. Or fight to win and take over the government, knowing that it would then have to deal with all those overwhelming problems. Which to choose? In the end, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and his team decided to fight to win elections and take over the government from the start. And the key consideration was not just the PAP's credibility or its ability to deal with the difficult problems, but the key consideration, what was at stake, was whether Singapore would be able to start off from a clean slate with corruption under control. Because the PAP leaders calculated that if there was one term of an incompetent and corrupt government, the system would go corrupt, the cancer would be embedded in our system and impossible to remove. Then Singapore would be finished. And that's why the PAP fought and won the 1959 general elections. And that's why Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and his colleagues wore white shirts and white trousers at their first swearing in and made it the party's uniform. It symbolized their determination to keep the government clean and incorruptible and it has set the tone for Singapore ever since. Secondly, so that's the first reason. We started off clean and we did not allow the system to go corrupt. Secondly, with strong political will, we institutionalized a robust, comprehensive anti-corruption framework. We have strict anti-corruption laws like the PCA, the Prevention of Corruption Act, which puts the burden of proof on the accused to show that he acquired his wealth legally. And if he can't prove that he acquired it legally and has unexplained wealth disproportionate to his known sources of income, then it can be presumed to be from graft and it can be confiscated unless proven otherwise. We also treat the actions of Singapore citizens overseas the same as actions committed in Singapore, regardless whether such corrupt acts have consequences in Singapore. So we've got a strong legal framework, and to enforce the laws, we have a strong and an independent CPIB. The CPIB can investigate anyone and has in the past investigated senior public officials and even ministers. And everyone knows that when the CPIB calls you up to lim kopi, it's not a casual invitation. And everyone knows if you lodge a complaint with CPIB, the CPIB will take it seriously and will investigate the complaint. The CPIB is opening a new corruption reporting center at Whitley Road. It's opening at the end of this year, and this will make it more convenient for the public to walk in and to report suspected corrupt cases. Because in the CPIB's experience, of all the inputs which it gets, the most valuable inputs are the ones in person, because you can speak to the person, get more details, verify the facts, assess the credibility, and be able to proceed if necessary. Besides the CPIB, we have also built in Singapore a professional public service with public officers imbued with the right values who understand the ethos of public service. We pay public servants fair and realistic wages benchmarked to private sector earnings, and in return, we demand the highest standards of integrity and performance. Thirdly, over time, we have developed a society and a culture that eschews corruption. Singaporeans expect and demand a clean system. They do not condone giving or accepting social lubricants to get things done, and they readily report corrupt practices when they encounter them. Singaporeans trust that the law applies to all and that the government will enforce the laws without fear or favor. And businesses too have confidence that in Singapore the rules are fair and transparent and equally applied. So today we have a precious and an extraordinary state of affairs of a clean system in a continent where corruption is a chronic problem. But by no means have we permanently and completely eradicated the problem. Because ultimately corruption is driven by human nature and greed. And however tight the system is, some individuals will still be tempted to break the rules. And when they do, we must make sure they are caught and deal severely with them. There's a Chinese proverb, 上梁不正,下梁歪. It means if the top beam is askew, the bottom beam supporting it will be crooked. Ultimately, keeping a system clean must start at the very top. Once upon a time, there was a Singapore Armed Forces officer who was on course overseas, and one of his classmates asked him, how does Singapore keep the system clean? So he explained our arrangements and the central role of the CPIB. Then his classmate asked him a follow-up question. But whom does the CPIB report to? So the Singaporean officer, young and a little bit innocent, replied without hesitation that the CPIB reported directly to the Prime Minister. And his classmate was further puzzled, and he didn't understand why until much later. And the reason was he was really being asked a different question. And the real question was, who guards the guardians? Well, CPIB reports to the Prime Minister reports to whom? How do you keep it clean? So this is an ancient riddle. There's no formula which guarantees a solution to this riddle. But in Singapore, we are determined to uphold the highest standards of integrity from the top down throughout our system. And it's not just putting the safeguards in place for the CPIB to investigate any matter or even the PM. And as you know, the CPIB can investigate anybody, and if the PM doesn't give it permission, the CPIB can go to the President and get permission from the President to proceed. But it's not just the rules, it's also how we conduct ourselves in every respect. Whether we uphold ourselves with integrity, whether we are transparent and are prepared to have a full investigation and public accountability when rumors or doubts threaten our credibility, even if it could be awkward or embarrassing. It's happened before. Those of you old enough will remember in 1996, nearly 20 years ago, rumors spread that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and I had received improper discounts on some property purchases which we had made. The Prime Minister was then Mr. Goh Chok Tong. He ordered a full investigation and found that there had been nothing improper. He brought the issue to Parliament. He stated the government's findings, and we held a full debate which lasted 3 days. And during the debate, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said, and I quote, "I take pride and satisfaction that the question of my 2 purchases and those of the Deputy Prime Minister, my son, has been subjected to and not exempted from scrutiny. It is most important that Singapore remain a place where no one is above scrutiny, that any question of integrity of a minister, however senior, that he has gained benefits either through influence or corrupt practices, be investigated." Mr. Lee Kuan Yew knew right from the start that Singapore's survival and progress depended on keeping this country clean and corruption-free. And that's why one item in this little exhibition is one of the artillery shell casings from the 21-gun salute fired by the SAF in honor of Mr. Lee during his state funeral procession. I presented it to the CPIB so that we are all reminded of this precious legacy that Mr. Lee and our founding fathers left us. A clean system built up now over more than half a century. It's a legacy that all of us must do our utmost to protect, not just in the courts, the government and the public service, all of whom must continue to uphold the highest levels of professionalism and integrity, but also among the public, who play an important role setting our social norms and keeping Singapore free of corruption. So I hope the declassified case archives and the stories shared by the CPIB investigation officers in this exhibition will remind all of us of the role we play in fighting corruption and help to keep Singapore a clean and an outstanding place in a very complicated world. Thank you very much.